Hey guys, Karn Effects, another Nerd. This video today, we are going to go over the winners and losers from the Tenacity / Resistance buff update. So if you haven't watched my video already, here's a little link in the corner there to show you. I go over all the stuff, at least semi-briefly. I kept it to 15 minutes. Give me some love for the 15-minute video. And I go over everything. I show you how to do things like change your arena payout time, stuff like that. So definitely check it out, but I did not go into details specifically on, hey, who's really getting hurt, who might you think they're getting hurt, but they're really not, and who's kind of like, whatever. This update doesn't affect them very much. This primarily centers around the fact that Meta, though, created a video, and I'm not blaming him. It was someone was going to put it out, and a lot of people had theorized he's the first one to put the pedal to metal and put it down on video. So you can solo Phase 1 and Phase 3 on these videos. And this is good for the game that this happened. I want to go ahead and say this is good for the game that one person cannot solo all of Phase 1, all of Phase 3, and like the first third of Mega Wheel. That's not good for the game, long term, short term, etc. And so it's good at making this change. Now bosses in Tier 7, it scales up. So not Tier 1 is not going to have this percentage, right? But Tier 7 Arachar bosses, so not the ads, not the minions, right? Just the bosses, whether mini bosses or boss, are going to have a 78.2 tenacity chance. So I'm going to do another video in the next couple days here, breaking down how does applying a debuff work? What's all the math that goes into it? What are all the stats that come into play here? Can I increase Ember's 30% chance to dispel buffs? I'll get into all of that, but suffice to say for right now, Tenacity resists potency. If your character has good potency, that Tenacity is going to help try and combat that if the Tenacity is greater than the potency. If the potency is greater than the Tenacity, it doesn't matter. So if you can get a character to have potency at 78.2% or more, it's going to apply every single time. Confirm that with the devs. Me and Meta, though, we're talking to them, and there's no guaranteed minimum chance to resist like there was in Star Wars Galaxy Heroes and some other games. So it's not that like 10-15% chance. Even if you have 30 million potency, there's still at 10-15% chance. Unless it's irresistible, that is not true in this game. So if you have 78.2% chance or potency, you're gonna beat out these bosses. You're gonna apply these debuffs 100% of the time. So just so you understand that. So now we're going to go into who were the winners and losers. And first, I just want to go over, there are some characters that have crazy high potency that don't need it for any reason at all. So maybe the developers might have given them certain pieces to avoid boosting their like magic damage more, giving them things that help them more. It's like, if we give them anything that helps them more, they're going to be crazy. So this may have been intentionally done to kind of give them gear that was kind of worthless, but still a requirement for them to get that higher gear level. But anyway, so Renara, who has zero, doesn't apply any buffs on enemies, right? So even future-proofing it, has no buffs it applies on enemies, and has no debuffs it applies on enemies. And yet, she has 65% potency. With a potency primary, she could land a debuff on any boss. Whatever. Get out of this town. Kagi, also. Freaking Kagi, has no abilities that apply buffs on enemies or debuffs on enemies. And yet, 63% potency. I don't understand. So, buffs his team, attacks a couple times. That's it. That's what the man does. That's all his effects. So anyway, he's got crazy tenacity or potency. So we're gonna go over the characters that are in use, that are higher potency characters that are relevant to this conversation. So Cruel, at first you might have been thinking, why the crap does she have 43% potency? Why would I care about this? She doesn't apply any debuffs. Guess what? She applies debuffs. Or she applies buffs now. I don't think they're going to have reflection count. I don't see that happening. That seems pretty excessive, and it's not applying a buff. So not considering that, just the invisibility on that second ability, right? Her first special, the one that allows you to turn that Tromgar, probably almost certainly Tromgar, but Tromgar, little baddie, whatever, turn that tank invisible whenever they've taunted on the first turn. Super helpful. So she actually has pretty solid potency. Just so you know, the flat amount of tenacity that any character has from gear, even at gear 11, the top one is 41%. So that means unless they've put more tenacity runing on their tank than Cruella has put potency on herself, she's still going to apply this 100% of the time. That's one reason she's, I'll get into my like official list a little later. Don't worry about Cruella. Freezard has fantastic potency at 41%. Base potency at gear 11. Potency 37% on Nightiel. You're going to see some of these characters. Robin Bad, right? 35% potency. These are all kind of like top, 10s to 15s in potency. Corcoran, because I know some people were using him to be able to consistently apply burning against hard orc in order to scale more damage. Ember, certainly not bad at 33. Revel, 32. Again, there's a lot of characters that people are using these raids, so I'm going to tell you who I think really gets roughed up by this and who doesn't. Now we're going to go into the bad. There's some really, really bad. And it's like really crucial to their kit. Like some of the characters who are worst at potency, a couple of the lowest of the low, really, really need it. So, yeah. Little Baddie applies that turn meter reduction, right? Applies blind with a special 27% potency, right? So whenever we were using Little Baddie now, if we're going to get her up to be able to have enough turn meter to actually have 100% chance, right? So here's the thing, right? 27, right? 78. What's 78 minus 27? It's 51. So that means basically there's a 50-50 chance that if she attempts to apply turn meter, so let's go ahead and look at that real quick, right? So I want to get, it looks like that. Oh, guys, I have to kind of remote into my laptop because that's where I put my test account, so I would have it anywhere. Sorry about that. Here we are. I'm going in. I'm going to show you a Little Baddie real quick, just so I'm not talking too much and not actually showing you things. I try to listen to the critiques, guys. So right here, right, even if you max this out, only has an 80% chance to decrease it. So if that 80% happens, then there will be that potency check, which again, if assuming no potency runes on her at all, you're going to have a 49, so like basically a 50-50 chance to 80% of the time reduce 25% turn meter. You can see how that's very different from how it was before in these videos where it was a lot more consistent. They really buffed up the tenacity here. So you've got Little Baddie, right? Popping back up to our list because it's a rough list. General Murdoch, before you even got here, is so rough. 26%. One of the way, like even if you didn't have goblins built up, and this was the next character, he was going to be fantastic. Plug and play in the raid because he's going to be able to crank out really significant damage, right? This is against Soleus, right? So we want that physical damage, throw a damage set on him, get him out there. Well, now he's kind of in the same boat as Little Baddie to where, he's going to have under a 50, he's going to have basically a 50%, but slightly under a 50% chance to do it without any runes. And you can fix things with runes pretty reasonably. So let's go ahead and show you that real quick. So if you go in here, one of my characters is going to have tenacity on. Let's go find him, Mr. Freezard, right? So over here, you can see you can get 17.25 from a 2-star potency primary. They only happen here in this northwest slot. And if we go into here, we look at the rune words, right? Where's the freaking potency one? Potency. But I did a lot of mod farming the other day. I absolutely hate looking at mods now. Still actually putting the mods on the characters. But anyway, so you can see here 15%. So that means with just a primary and one set, you can get 32. So we can cut that 59 or 49% chance all the way up into the 80s with one set, which still allows you to keep damage, right? Keep a damage set for your attackers, keep a decent amount of health for your defenders. You're going to be able to keep a lot of that if you're able to do both of those things. The problem is that these Northwest runes are always on hard modes right now. So that means you can only run them a certain number of times a day, and you have to if you want to refresh, it costs more Dracoins, and they cost more energy to run them. It's all all in all, this is the one that gets hurt the most, because this slot also, right, that also is a hard mode node, but there's only one primary there, so all you have to worry about is getting good secondaries. Here you got to worry about getting the right primary you want, and then you got to worry about getting good secondaries on it after. This is definitely a tricky slot. I would be running this if you've got a lot of shards farmed, if you have the availability. You should be farming the northwest slot on any rune set that you use. I would do it on crit damage in case they eventually, buff it up. I'd do it on damage. I'd do it on crit chance. I'd do it on health. I'd do it on speed, because you need good secondaries. You need the right primaries. So go ahead and do that. So anyway, it's not impossible to take a large chunk of that away, but 80% of the time isn't 100% reliable either, so it does still kind of stink. Those characters do not end up on my, worst characters impacted by this thing. So let's go back and just kind of check out some of these other characters just so you know. By the way, I got all this data from Zeri. Zeri has a whole table built out. I think he's going to be making it public at some point, just not yet. It has all of these stats right here in sortable fashion for every character, so I could just make this list. So big props to my buddy Zeri for putting that together and sharing that with me. So more Doom, right? You say more Doom? Yeah, because on his freaking special, we're gonna show this, because this is unfortunate for him. Even though his stats aren't that bad, it's everything he does. Basically, it's basically everything he does, right? Removes buff on basic. Now that's gonna have to go by a potency check, right? Doom, all these debuffs he's trying to apply. Now here's what I will say. If you go in here, he gets bonus tenacity for each demon in the party. Whenever he summons these guys right here, he's going to have 2 unless you kill him. I will say, though, that's turn 3, or his 4th turn he's to be able to have it, so it's only by your 2nd turn unless you run him with demons on his team, which he doesn't really fit super well with demons. He's solidly plug and play. He can work with demons, definitely, because he's just a great character overall. But he kind of still is better run with orcs, in my opinion, even ignoring that. This may change things now, prior to the resistances and the buff dispel being resistible, all that being boosted. I might change that. He might be better with demons now just to get that. But so he's not crippled as bad because he has the passive, but it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like everything he does except for summon, So we're going to pull this back up. Puncher Face. So he didn't quite make my top 5 list, but this really does stink for Puncher Face because he doesn't have. This is the only thing that he does that has anything to do with potency, right? One move is this, and he has 25%. When he's trying to apply taunt in these other characters, whenever they have that 30, 35%, there's a chance you might not get that taunt on the character that's about to die from the AoEs or something like that. It's a little frustrating. It's like, man, do I really need to throw a potency set on Puncher Face? Potency primary is easy because the loss isn't as bad. That should be the first place you try and put on extra potency, is in that northwest slot, because you don't have to give up a set potentially. You don't have to potentially give up a crit chance set, which a lot of people are going to be looking at doing for their damage dealers or even their supports, right? So it's unfortunate because it's the only way it's going to be useful is whenever you apply that. But he is useful against Soleus for doing that, so it might be worth it, but you lose that crit chance secondary, and it's a secondary. You lose the crit chance set, and it's a set people have had for longer, so they've probably been farming it longer. They probably have better secondaries. Master Duo. This made me sad. Mr. Panda doesn't have incredible chance to apply buffs anyway, but yeah, let's go this time. This is one of the ones that hurt me a lot to see, because he doesn't even have crazy chance to apply slow in the first place. So he's got 50% chance to apply it. People are trying to give him speed runes in order to get him a little faster, even though his base speed is so low that it only helps so much anyway. And then his Termia reduction can get this is unfortunate. Again, you can throw, basically the recommendation on Master Duo is going to be to throw all potency on him, essentially. because not all potency, all but like one, but it's just kind of, you'll end up throwing a health set and a couple potencies with a potency primary on, because, and you just have to stack up the, you have to obviously have a speed primary on it and speed secondaries. So he doesn't have very great ones. Hard Orc also hurt real bad. All the bleeds that he's going to try to play, 18%. 18! I mean, again, this doesn't impact the ad, so still the same kind of like potency check against the, like the tanks against Solius, but unfortunate, you're going to run him with full potency, basically. You're going to run him with, because you're basically able to add, if you do the math right, you're able to add 62.25% potency with 2-star runes. 62. So if we do it, right, 62 plus 18, that gets him to 80, right, a couple percent's over. So if you have good secondaries, you can throw like a crit chance set or a health set or something like that as your second set, but you have to take the damage set off of him if you're gonna have a reliable chance to stick it. So you can say, hey, I think it's more important to have the damage set on. I'm just gonna miss that every once in a while. Or you can say it's really crucial he lands those bleeds because I'm more caring about stacking him on Revel and him doing the damage. So that's a bit unfortunate. Diesel Rog, you aren't even good. You aren't even good, and now your buff dispel that comes with going with freaking goblins. You're gonna need potency, like a lot of potency for that. Man, I thought he was going to be good against Solius. I was so pumped. This is unfortunate. Again, this change, I said this in my other video, this change needed to happen for the good of the game. But Venomate, man, I didn't even know this guy. 15%, give me a freaking break. Illyria, that potency decrease. I've been using that, super helpful. Now it's like, la la la. I'm going to have to put potency on her, or it's only going to happen like a third of the time now. Give me a break. Thallin. I mean, we're gonna have to look at Thallin, because again, if it's like crucial, okay, I gotta show you. All right, we're going to Thallin. I was so pumped about her. She's like the character who like was gonna neuter. I've said multiple times, neuter Solius, right? Oh, we're gonna inflict daze. That's a debuff. Oh, we're gonna apply buff immunity and block healing. Those are debuffs. This isn't debuff. Until you get to the end, where if every enemy has been damaged, they get ability block. This actually doesn't have any debuffs, but debuffing gives her turn meter. Oh. And here, she at least gets some crit chance. Nothing happened there. It's turn meter recovery on crits, so it's not like reducing on other people, but literally everything but her leadership on a 5 ability character gets messed up. And she has, count 'em, 12% potency. I think that unless the devs are really trying to take this into consideration, like, hey, she already has crazy physical damage, we need to force people to use potency sets on her because otherwise she's going to be too bonkers. Maybe that's why we don't have her. As you're watching me on my test account, we don't have her. We cannot do anything with her yet. So, but I don't know. I think some of these characters, the devs should probably go back and check and say, hey, do we want to add some to kind of like their base potency, because it's pretty, we haven't even gotten to the worst ones. Major Shot, right? Not only is the effect from his leadership now resistible, where are you at? Right? He's going to be able to reduce cooldowns. Now that's resistible, right? 50% chance to increase cooldown of an enemy's ability upon landing a critical hit. That's resistible now. Wasn't resistible before. Also, look at all the freaking debuffs he tries to apply between the blindness, the healing block, the stun. And he has 10% potency. Ugh. Ugh. That's bad. Shadar. 7%. 7. The bottom 3 characters, spoiler alert, all are like debuff intensive. And they have 7% or under. And one of them is a legendary. And one of them comes from T7 rewards. So, basically, whenever part of Shadar's leadership is that demons are able to apply slow on whenever they apply a debuff. So whenever he tries to apply his defense down on armor decrease on basic, whenever he tries to apply stun, which you wouldn't be able to do on a boss anyway, so that's not as big of a deal. But when he tries to apply defense down on bosses, if you don't have a ton of tenacity on him, you're not getting jack. And he's such a great character to run with speed. And he's such a great character to run with damage. What you gonna do? You're gonna care more about the defense down? You're gonna, and potentially putting slow on there too, right? You're gonna care about doing the damage. I think you're gonna have to care about the potency at least a bit. You're at least throwing a potency set and primary in this guy. You might still make the argument for speed set, but we'll see. Buff. Maybe this is intentional because one of his abilities is so OP and he has a way to kind of compensate for this, but big fat one. There's one left up here, guys. You can't see it in the tab there, but there's one left, and I want you to take a guess at what number is less than 1. Hoy. So 1% base potency. That really is a freaking dice roll, dude. I love the concept of this character. So right, applying turn meter reduction. Putting all these debuffs on people. Now here's where he gets the help, right? Whenever you get to at least this level's ability, both he and the target he chooses to switch with get a potency increase, and he gets to use this on his first turn. So we can use that and then immediately go into this as his next ability. So unless this gets dispelled, which is now resistible, he's actually going to have a lot higher. He's actually going to be more in the range of someone like Nightiel. So not actually as detrimental, but still, like, the rotation works out because they're both on 4, and so it's always going to go bang, bang. But still, 1%, that's not very much. It's not very much. You still want to give him at least a potency set and primary. So none of that, but again, all like the chances to decrease whenever you hit him, right? All these times that various demons are going to be hitting these bosses, now that's going to be able to be resisted too. Which, honestly, it should have been. That's how it is in pretty much every other game. That was the one I was kind of surprised by, but anywho. Now, the final character, who literally has 0 potency, is Voiren. Also, I think this was accounted for, and it's what makes me think that this is all kind of intentional about how they're kind of wanting us to ruin certain characters. But we just got Yogi, in case you haven't seen it, and go ahead, I'm going to put a character spotlight thing in there, so go watch it, right? With Yogi, if you go in here, Cold Blood with Voiren, if they're both in, then Voiren gets that bonus potency. So again, kind of like Buff is able to buff his own potency in order to give it to himself, Voiren's able to get the same and get to more of like the mediocre range. The mediocre range is kind of like that, like 25 to 30%, or like 30 to 35%. That's kind of like a mediocre percentage of potency. So now we've gone through all that. Who's the winners and who's the losers? So first of all, the big winners, bar none, are these bad boys right here. These bad boys right here, despite the fact that we can still solo it. And yes, Meta is still soloing things because that's what he does. These guys got a lot of help. Big winners, for sure. That 78.2% tenacity. Again, it doesn't apply in the minions, but so many significant things like slow and turn meter reduction, cooldown reductions. It's not going to stick as often, or we're going to have to get rid of better damage in order to get better potency. So don't go too crazy if you just cleared T7 like us. Don't go too crazy on thinking, hey, we can just go FFA now, because we're going to have to make some adjustments here as soon as this thing comes out. So better to stay consistent, get your shards, and get that T7 gear. So big winners, 100% array bosses. So this is kind of like a sneak little thing, because I have a top 3, right? My top 3 for winners and losers. We got, I already talked about him in my other video a little bit, but Sharp. So even though he got fixed, which basically means he's no longer applying damage increase to everyone, he's only applied to himself, this crit chance increase now becomes super helpful whenever you're trying to help out Foul and Robin Bad hit those TMRs, which stands for turn meter reductions. Hit those TMRs. He's able to put out that crit chance so that they can afford to put in one potency set in order to have consistent turn meter reduction whenever they get their crits. If you haven't watched yet, Meta though already put out another video. Can I put that in here? How many things can I put in here? I don't know. I will link it in the description if it is not in there. But he now becomes more valuable for trying these solos, or at least these longer runs. Even if you don't have the gear to solo it, right? Don't quite the RNG to solo it. He's going to get farther because he's going to be buffing those TMRs who require the crits to happen. And the third one, and this is kind of a question mark. I'm curious to see what will happen in the arena as we change this. Potentially Tromgar. Is it going to become worth it now to go all in on Tenacity to prevent particularly Cruel, right, from going in and just blowing it away? Because just like you can add that 62.5% potency, Tenacity scales at the same rate, whether it's hits on the secondaries, whether it's how the potency scale or the primary scales up as you level it up, the value of the set bonuses, it's all the same. So Tromgar has 36% base Tenacity, less than Cruel, right? If you put all of it on him, that dude's going to have almost 100, he's going to have a couple percent off, right? He's going to like a 98.5 or whatever percent Tenacity. That means if your Cruel doesn't have any potency on it, she's only going to be able to stick that about 40% of the time now, 40-50% of the time. So now it's like, well, even if I just put one set on there, and this is why it's significant, because what it forces Cruel to not be able to equip herself with rune-wise. Because right now she's really great with speed runes. She's relatively fast at her base speed once you like get her geared up at least a little bit, and she has good potency. But if you only add, right, the 15% from a set, 16%, 31, 70, oh, well, he's still going to resist that a third of the time. Now you can add some secondaries in there, but still, now he's resisting it maybe a quarter of the time. A quarter of the time is, we have worse RNG than that, but let's add some more RNG to it. I could potentially see some people deciding to test that out, because now if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to throw another potency set on there. I'm going to bump my chances like 95+% of being able to stick this invisibility on him. You've now lost your speed set. And if you're running with damage, okay, fine. But particularly for a lot of people, you've lost her speed set on her in order to make it work, which slows her down, which makes her less of a problem. You may not be able to get in. You may not be able to get her into attack now before all of your other damage dealers. So that means they're going to smack their head up against Tromgar probably. Even if you have Kairos, they're going to be hitting Tromgar and not someone else. And usually Cruel goes in the Kyra slot, so they probably don't have them on the same team, potentially getting stunned. I could see that happening. Overall, I don't think it's a huge deal. He is number 3 out of the winners because I do think it requires a lot of investment into his Tenacity, and you're losing a lot of health from him if you do that. And considering that, Soleus, if you get lucky, you can get at least one huge heal on him, and that's significant now if he's able to get wiped out. So it's kind of a question mark there, but anywho, who are the losers? Okay, I'm going to go number 4 to number 1 loser. I already talked about him before with Major Shot. This is a big L, because until we get General Murdoch, he's the only leader the Goblins have, and probably the coolest thing out of his kit, although, hey, extra damage on order is great, but the coolest thing out of his kit now can be resisted. And he has garbage Tenacity. Like, arena relevant garbage Tenacity, not like T7 raid relevant Hoy. So big 4th number loser, and I've already talked about this too. And the only reason I'm putting her this far down is because we don't even have her unlocked yet. There are changes that can be made. We'll see. Is Thalen, because again, abilities 1 through 4, everything but the leadership just got roughed up because this is obviously going to have her at level 1. I don't know if she's even going to have any on here right now. She goes to 12%. When you have her at max gear right now, gear 11, she has 12% potency. dude, you have to, when you get her, at a minimum, she is going to require a potency set and a potency primary. You can't run her any other way effectively, even in arena, which is rough. And she's super useful against Solia, so you're probably going to end up putting... You might have to get rid of the damage set or the speed set, something like that, which is rough. Now, here's the thing. She does have bonkers crit chance. She has almost 10% higher base crit chance than anyone else in the game at gear 11. So, should be alright, because we don't need to give her that crit chance set anyway. We can just give her the potency one to replace. But you might need to break it up. We'll see. Next one. Again, it hurt me a little bit. Master Duo. He at least can still build up some Termir for the team using this. But this was an L. This is an L for Master Duo. You're gonna probably need to run 2 potency sets and a potency primary with probably a health set and get all your speed you can from primaries, and then from the 1 speed primary and from secondaries. It's probably your plan. Don't plan on putting a speed set on him anymore. That's what. Don't put a damage set on him. You can't. It's just not as important as him sticking those. Little extra damage is something nice, but he's got to be able to stick that. And the big L, the biggest L, in my opinion, goes to Hard Orc, because the thing that makes the most sense is to just give him tons of potency and get rid of his damage set. That's what makes the most sense, considering his value in the raid. Now, if you're not running him in the raid, right, you have him under 7 stars and you're running T7, okay, leave a damage set on him, because that does make him better for things like tower, arena, random events and tournaments, etc. It does make him better. It's better because your enemy, most of the people you're going to be fighting in tournaments are not going to have 78% tenacity, right? Few people even run with tenacity sets, period. And even if they run with a tenacity set and a tenacity primary, and they have really high base tenacity, they're still going to have about the same or definitely less, from most characters, tenacity than these T7 raid bosses. So he doesn't need it in those cases, but he needs it in the raids. That's frustrating. So now don't panic. I've shown some of these guys already. I'm going to tell you why not to panic. Freezard has really great base tenacity at gear 11. So I'm going to go ahead back up here. Freezard, right? That 41%. By the time you just switch, you can keep your damage set on him, right? Because he does have crazy flat damage, which means that set is more valuable. Potency in the primary, 1 potency set along with the damage, and that's immediately going to give you, right, the 32.25%. You add 32.25, so 41. Right, you get 73 and change, and now you just gotta find like another 5% in secondaries. You can easily do that. Try to do it in like your speed primary, some other things that are like, hey, I don't need to worry about getting speed secondaries right at my speed primary. It's where I like to get some of my crucial secondaries on my speed primary. So do not worry, do not mourn for your Freezards. He's gonna be okay. And the next one is actually Nightiel. For arena, for everything. Don't really worry about it. It might get... Again, it'll depend on how people do the Tromgar thing. If enough people do the Tromgar thing, it might become enough of a deal. But even then, it's random. You got 20% chance of even taking something away from... of even taking a single buff away from Tromgar if there's 5 enemies out with buffs on them. So what? I just feel like, hey, you know what? If it happens, it happens. But I feel like you're probably actually best. Don't change your runing at all. Probably run a primary, because the potency primary is a good slot. What, are you going to throw like a few damage percent on there? I don't think that's as significant. 100 damage is not, in this new circumstance, worth that like 17% potency. It's not. So... Don't worry about your Nightiel. And that's one of the things people are saying. It's like, oh, it's like it's a counter to Nightiel. They want to make this like, it's really not going to happen that much. It's really not going to be relevant that much. Well, yeah, like clearing the damage increase from like your own Nightiel on some character, maybe it's Nightiel, maybe it's not, isn't convenient. It's not helpful. But what, like now you're going to throw tenacity on your Nightiel to make it so she has more? Look, her tenacity is lower than her potency. Are you really going to throw more than a Tenacity primary on your Nightiel to make sure her attack increase doesn't get reduced? No. So is this a nerf to Nightiel? I'm going to go ahead and say flat out no. It's really not. Yes, she will not as regularly clear things from bosses in the raid. The time that's most even relevant is against Mega Wheel because he doesn't have as many buffs on himself, and it's haste, which is a really important one to get rid of. But Hard Orc, like, let's say you get rid of the crit damage, he still has crit chance up there. If you get rid of the trance, he still has crit damage. You know, it doesn't hurt, but it's not. It is not worth losing like a good crit chance set. 100%, no doubt. All right, next on my list of don't worry is Revel. Because he's not even the first of all, he's not even the primary person who's going to be dropping those, because you want to use his AoE to clear those ads and stuff, right, against T7 Solius. And again, the tenacities of people you're going to be fighting in arena and tournaments, etc., are not going to be as high as these bosses. They're probably going to be a little more than half that. Don't worry. Throw a potency set on him. Do throw the potency set on. Do throw the potency primary if you weren't already, but he definitely should have had the potency primary. And now you're going to be sitting at like 60 some percent, which means that about 80+% of the time you're going to be sticking to bleeds anyway. Not worrisome. Not great, but not worrisome at all. Next, Cruel. Already talked about it. She has 43% potency. You throw that set on, now you're sitting, this isn't even useful against a raid. This is not even a huge deal against a raid. Unless someone's going to throw more than a Tenacity primary and set on Tromgar, you basically don't even have to worry as long as you throw a potency set on and as long as you throw a potency primary. If you throw both of those on, someone has to be running at least 4 Tenacity runes and a primary on their Tromgar for it to be relevant. And even then, if they throw another one, it's only going to happen like 20-25% of the time, which is not great. It's not a good thing for you if that were to happen. But the odds, I mean, you have five attempts on arena. This is not panic time. I would keep the speed set on her, keep the and run her with a potency set on top of that in the primary. And the last two I'm going to talk about before I let you all go. I tried to keep it shorter, I did, but anyway, where is my okay? So I got Foul and Robin Bad, right? We just had these videos come out showing both of them being hugely helpful against in soloing these bosses, or at least getting crazy far. Let's look at it. Crit chance is what they need, right, in order to hit the crit. And then potency is what they need to apply the TMR once they've done that. 31+%, that's top. So basically the top 8 are all within 2 percentage points of each other. 30 to 32, except Fallon, who's at 41. She's bonkers, right? Though 2 through 8 are all within 2 percent points of each other. And they're both in that range. So they've got great base crit chance, and they have above average potency. So again, you pair them with Sharp, pair them with Master Duo, and pair them with I am spacing right now. You pair them with that 5th person. Watch Metado's video; he has it, I'm sure. He's probably even put out more stuff since the changes have come out, just because I see him testing stuff here. So put one potency set on. It should definitely be the primary in the Northwest, but put one potency set on, keep the other 2 crit chance sets, obviously keep the crit chance primary, and you're still going to hit a high percentage of these, particularly whenever you partner them with Sharp, with that crit chance buff spread. So do not panic about this for the people already invested highly into them. It does make it harder on us. You're not going to get as much damage out, but this is not a crippling thing. It's going to reduce our overall damage output a little bit. So it's going to slow down teams that were getting close a little bit. It's going to make things irritating for the few guilds that have recently kind of like started clearing a little bit. It's not going to stop anything. So in the end, I think it's a lot of overreaction theater, even though I do think, I'm like, man, it was more about just how low some of these characters' potencies are. I mean, that one's a legendary, buffs at 1%. And even though they have ways to compensate for it, it's just like, dude, it's crazy low tenacity, or crazy low potency. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it up right here. Thank you for tuning in. Don't panic, even though there are some winners and some losers. It's all going to be okay. It's nothing like game breaking. It's nothing that has destroyed the meta. It's nothing that created a brand new meta. Keep on keeping on. Make some small adjustments. I think what the devs are trying to do is they're trying to make certain sets more valuable than they were. Tenacity is more valuable now. Potency is more because there's more to resist. Tenacity is more valuable because there's more to resist. But no, potency is more valuable now because more people are going to put tenacity on, and because in the raid now, and crit damage, right? They changed crit damage too they changed damage to make crit damage more valuable. So now it's actually possible for crit damage to be better at some point because they want us to be able to need all those things. We're not able to target farm too well. It's all stuff that is not bad for the game, even though I feel like some of these characters should get a little help on the potency. But anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. Let me know the other things you want to see, and I'll catch you next time.